Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. This is one of my verses from Proverbs. Its words may seem direct and simple, almost obvious, but it carries deep unfoldings and God's promises for every man who desires to walk free from anxiety. What I will give you in this video as counsel, drawn directly from the Word, is like a guide to remain calm and at peace in every area of life. If you seek to walk without hurry, in a lighter way, join me in this moment of rest. I will make you understand my writings in a level of detail you may never have seen before, all with the weight of a route, of a compass, of direction. Before we move on, breathe and settle your heart. Whether you are a wise man seeking to align work and purpose, or someone desiring peace in decisions, I want you to relax and stop jumping from one video to another for a moment. Here there will be reading of the Word, intertwined with practical reflections. There will be moments of communion with God, and conclusions that will build up your soul. I know you may have already noticed, but do not pass judgment on the fact that I am here speaking to you as if I were King Solomon himself. This is only so that your experience may be more vivid and profound, as if truly having me as a friendly counselor in this moment of rest. It is simply an immersive resource so that the ancient wisdom of God's Word may enter into your steps today. Let us open the Bible in Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6, and read again. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. Acknowledge the Lord in all your ways, and he will make your paths straight. These words were written for men of all times, for every role and need, for those who decide at negotiating tables, and for those who decide in the quiet of the kitchen. What I meant to teach here was simple yet decisive at the same time. Leaning only on one's own analysis makes the leg falter in the middle of the climb, but acknowledging the Lord in every step makes the road align even when the terrain remains uneven. It is not a promise of a flat path. It is a promise of straight direction. Therefore, man who fears God, do not confuse control with trust. And you, wise man, do not confuse calculation with guidance. Allow me to pray for you now. Lord, give us quietness of mind and rule over our affections, so that the anxiety for control and for the future may not take the throne of the heart. Teach us to acknowledge you in all our ways, to submit motives and deadlines, to accept course corrections as care. May every decision be born in your presence and walk under your peace. Deliver us from the haste that diverts, and steady our steps in your faithfulness, and amen. If this journey of wisdom is already making sense, I ask you something simple and important. Leave your like on this video and subscribe now to this channel, so you may continue to have direct access to me in these moments of rest, receiving counsel that edifies and strengthens wise men and men who fear God. Thus you remain at the table, walking with me through the Word, and each new daily video with principles of prosperity and wisdom becomes another safe step on your path. Trade anxious control for obedient trust. Let us open together the Bible in Proverbs chapter 3, starting at verse 1 and continuing through verse 12. My son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart, for they will prolong your life many years and bring you prosperity. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves, as a father the son he delights in. What I wanted to show here, wise man, is that trust in God does not eliminate discipline, it shapes it. I wrote that the Lord makes paths straight, but also that he corrects firmly. The anxiety of one who tries to control everything creates haste, creates weight, creates fatigue. But the one who learns to trust accepts the rhythm of correction, understands that every limit is care. See that I linked trust and prosperity, discipline and love, because the anxiety for predictability tries to create shortcuts, but the fear of the Lord keeps you on the path that bears fruit. Man who fears God, remember, the straightened path is not the absence of stones, but the firm direction that delivers you from roads that would destroy your peace. Let us now open the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, from verse 1 through 13. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. I wrote these words to teach you, man who fears God, that not everything fits into the calendar you draw with anxiety. There is a time determined for each season of life, and it is no use trying to rush what only blooms in spring. Anxiety is born from the illusion of total predictability, as if each person, each number, each result could obey your calculation. But see, wise man, God placed in the heart of man the longing for eternity, precisely to remind him that not everything will be under his control. Trust is accepting that there is a divine rhythm governing each season. When you try to manipulate time, you wear yourself out. But when you acknowledge it, you find joy even in the simple tasks of the day. I now invite you to open with me the Song of Songs, chapter 3, from verse 1 through 4. All night long on my bed, I looked for the one my heart loves. I looked for him but did not find him. I will get up now and go about the city, through its streets and squares. I will search for the one my heart loves. So I looked for him but did not find him. The watchmen found me as they made their rounds in the city. Have you seen the one my heart loves? Scarcely had I passed them when I found the one my heart loves. I held him and would not let him go till I had brought him to my mother's house, to the room of the one who conceived me. What I meant to teach here, wise man, is that even in the deepest love there is a time of waiting and searching. Anxiety and control do not generate encounter, only fatigue. Those who truly love learn to rise, to seek, but also to rest when they do not immediately find. Man who fears God, notice with me, the encounter comes at the right time, and when it comes, it is firm, it is safe, it is embraced. Faith works the same way. It is not through constant vigilance that you secure the result, but through patient trust that you experience God's care. Just as the beloved walked the streets until she found, you too must walk in prayer and presence. Not to force, but to acknowledge that the one who guides your steps is faithful. The invisible mistake, man who fears God, is to confuse faith with control. When someone believes their trust will only be valid if all variables are in their hands, faith turns into anxiety. True faith is not demanding guarantees, but accepting the light sufficient for the next step. I said in my words that the Lord makes paths straight, not that he reveals the entire road at once. The wise man learns to walk in the clarity that suffices for today. He learns that too many forecasts may only produce frustration. It is at this point that faith is distinguished from control. One rests, the other consumes. That is why I teach you to adopt a decision model in 3 movements. First, pray, to align the heart and calm the mind. Then plan in pencil, knowing that the eraser may be needed. And then take the step that is lawful and wise, without the demand for absolute certainties. See, wise man, anxious control demands a spotlight that shows the whole horizon. But the Lord, in his faithfulness, offers a lamp for the feet. The lamp illuminates the stretch sufficient for now, and tomorrow will come at the rhythm of grace. It is in this rhythm that trust grows. It is in this rhythm that the fear of God overcomes haste and opens the way to peace. When we speak of health, wise man, many fall into the temptation of trying to control even what is beyond their hands. They await exams and results as if their lives depended on each immediate number, and anxiety builds mental catastrophes ahead of time. But wisdom teaches, do what is within your reach, care for food, consultations, rest, activity, and then hand over what is not within your reach. The final diagnosis, the healing time, the outcome, all this is in God's hands. A man who fears God learns to acknowledge that the Lord's faithfulness does not vanish in the silence of a laboratory. He sustains also in the in-between, between the test and the answer, between the fear and the healing. He remains. In the family, anxiety disguises itself as constant surveillance. Fathers and mothers try to control every step of a child in crisis, imagining that continuous pressure will straighten the heart. But the effect is the opposite. Presence becomes weight. Care becomes prison. Man who fears God, what preserves the relationship is balance, just boundaries, consistent presence, and prayer for wisdom. You do not prevent a child from making mistakes by force, but you can open your heart to listen and wait for God's timing. Often your pressure closes doors that the Lord would open with gentleness. Therefore, wise man, do not confuse vigilance with love. To love is to be ready to guide, but also willing to wait. And in the field of work and business, the same anxiety is revealed. How many demand guarantees before even taking the first step? I teach you that the wise route is to begin with prototypes, with tests, with small pilots before the larger bets. Failure is not always failure. Often the closed door is only the straightened path. It is God sparing you from a greater fall, from an investment that would consume your future. The wise man learns to see adjusted paths, not as defeat, but as protection. The man who fears God understands that even a no can be blessing, that even the door that closes is a faithful answer. I will now open the word again in Proverbs chapter 16, from verse 1 through 9. To humans belong the plans of the heart, but from the Lord comes the proper answer of the tongue. All a person's ways seem pure to them, but motives are weighed by the Lord. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans. The Lord works out everything to its proper end, even the wicked for a day of disaster. The Lord detests all the proud of heart. Be sure of this, they will not go unpunished. Through love and faithfulness, sin is atoned for. Through the fear of the Lord, evil is avoided. When the Lord takes pleasure in anyone's way, he causes their enemies to make peace with them. Better a little with righteousness than much gain with injustice. In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. What I wanted to teach here, man who fears God, is that it is not isolated calculations that define the outcome. I myself wrote that the proper answer comes from the Lord. How many times has overconfidence made men run without realizing the road was crooked? But the one who trusts hands over before running, consults before leaning on himself. Wise man, do not confuse God's silence with lack of direction. Sometimes the path seems stalled, but it is him preparing the step that truly sustains. I will now jump to Proverbs chapter 28, verses 25 and 26. The greedy stir up conflict, but those who trust in the Lord will prosper. Those who trust in themselves are fools, but those who walk in wisdom are kept safe. Here, I showed the contrast between two paths. The one who trusts in his own heart, full of desires and passions that deceive, ends up falling. But the man who fears God, who acknowledges the Lord and walks in wisdom, finds salvation. Not salvation from non-existent problems, but salvation from wrong steps, unnecessary falls, illusions that corrode. See, wise man, trusting in oneself looks like freedom, but in reality it is prison. Trusting in the Lord looks like renunciation, but in reality it is security. Let us also go to the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. Consider what God has done. Who can straighten what he has made crooked? When times are good, be happy, but when times are bad, consider this. God has made the one as well as the other. Therefore, no one can discover anything about their future. What I wanted to reveal here is that anxiety for control is born from the refusal to accept the bad day. But the wise man learns that both the good day and the difficult day are under the same faithful hand. Man who fears God, it is not your predictability that guarantees peace. It is the certainty that God governs every season. When He allows the day of adversity, it is also care, it is also teaching, it is also correction. And I want to read also the words of my father David in Psalm 37 from verse 3 through 7. Trust in the Lord and do good, dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Take delight in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will do this. He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. What my father wrote here is the echo of what I taught: to trust and to rest, to commit and to wait. Anxious control looks at others and frets, as if God had forgotten their steps. But the wise man learns to dwell in safety, even when he does not see immediate progress. Man who fears God, notice, God's justice shines at the right time, and even His silence is part of the answer that straightens your paths. Man who fears God, after having walked through so much counsel from the Word, I now want to open a reflection on the illusions that feed anxiety. Often the heart wears out not because resources or opportunities are lacking, but because it believes distorted ideas that seem logical but weaken the soul. They are myths that promise security, but only produce more weight. I want to reveal to you how they work and how divine wisdom undoes them without leaving you in passivity. One of these myths says, if I calculate everything, I will avoid pain. It seems like prudence, but it turns into rigidity. The wise man who clings to this reasoning begins to carry guilt for every detail that slips from his control. He lives exhausted, trying to close every gap. And in the end, the pain does not disappear. It only adds to the fatigue. Wisdom teaches the opposite. The fear of the Lord preserves us, not the sum of spreadsheets and forecasts. Another myth rises as a banner of self-sufficiency. Only I know the best way. Whoever leans on this deception closes ears to counsel, despises the signs and rejects corrections. Man who fears God, how many falls have come precisely from the arrogance of walking alone? I myself wrote that in the multitude of counselors there is safety, but anxiety convinces the heart that listening to others is weakness. That is why I offer you the antidotes. First, sound counsel, not just any voice, but the voice of one who loves truth more than pleasing. Then inner peace as a criterion. If everything seems right on paper, but the soul loses serenity, slow down, and finally, the freedom to erase and rewrite plans. Wise man, using the pencil is a sign of humility, not failure. Man who fears God, to acknowledge divine direction is to leave room for Him to guide even the details. Allow me to tell you a small parable, wise man. There was a farmer who cared for his field diligently. He watered the land every day, prepared the soil, cleared the stones, but he became restless because the plants did not grow at the speed he wanted. In his anxiety, he began to gently pull the stems upward, trying to hasten the process. And what happened? The roots, still fragile, could not withstand it, and the harvest was lost. What I wanted to show in this story is that trust requires patience. The cautious farmer knows that there is a part that is his, to water, to fertilize, to care, and a part that belongs only to God, the invisible growth of the roots. The man who fears God understands that haste kills, but trust makes it flourish. Therefore, practice this surrender daily. Pray in the morning and at night, acknowledging the Lord in every area of life. Record in a notebook the paths that have already been straightened in the past, so that your memory strengthens your trust. And cultivate micro-habits of rest, such as breathing deeply, reading a brief portion of the Word and giving thanks. These small gestures are like drops of water that keep the soil fertile. Wise man, let us now take a brief pause of communion. Close your eyes for a moment and breathe. Present before the Lord that area where you have been trying to control everything. Maybe it is a project, your business, your job, maybe a relationship, maybe your own health. Thank Him for His care thus far, and ask for direction for the next steps. While you hear my background sound, allow peace to take over your heart and my words so far to settle within you. If you prefer, you can briefly pause this video. And if you wish, leave your name and a prayer request in the comments, and also intercede for someone who commented. May this space become a true brotherhood of wise men and men who fear God, who pray for one another, sustained by the Lord's faithfulness. Plan with pencil, walk with peace. Let us open together in Proverbs chapter 24, verses 3 through 6. By wisdom a house is built, by understanding it is established, and by knowledge its rooms are filled with all precious and pleasant riches. A wise man is strong, and a man of knowledge increases his strength. By wise guidance you wage war, and in the multitude of counselors there is victory. What I wanted to teach here is that it is not enough to raise walls. The interior must be filled with understanding. Man who fears God, notice, it is not haste that builds a stable family or a solid business, but wisdom accumulated in each choice. When you consult faithful counselors, when you do not walk alone, you build in a way that endures. Wise man, understand that victory is not in hurry, but in shared discernment. Now let us go to Proverbs chapter 21, verses 5 through 8. Well-planned diligence leads to abundance, but excessive haste leads to poverty. Wealth acquired with a lying tongue is smoke that quickly dissipates. Whoever seeks unjust shortcuts ends up on paths of death. The wicked is trapped by his own guilt, but the righteous lives secure in his integrity. Here I showed the difference between planning with diligence and running in desperation. The man who fears God learns that care in the details is honor, but the chase for shortcuts and quick gains is a snare. Wise man, see, the anxiety that demands immediate results leads to poverty of soul and the ruin of goods, but the discipline of planning with patience yields abundance. And I also want to read in Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verses 1 through 6. Cast your bread upon the waters, for after many days you will find it. Divide your portion among 7 and even 8, for you do not know what disaster may come upon the land. If the clouds are full, they pour rain upon the earth. Whether a tree falls to the south or to the north, in the place where the tree falls, there it will lie. Whoever watches the wind will not sow, and whoever looks at the clouds will not reap. Just as you do not know the path of the wind, nor how bones are formed in the womb of a pregnant woman, so you do not know the works of God who makes all things. So in the morning and in the evening, do not let your hands be idle, for you do not know which seed will prosper, whether this or that, or whether both alike will be good. What I taught here is that there is a limit to human control. You can sow, you can share, you can work on more than one front. But you cannot command the wind nor hasten the mystery of life. Wise man, I meant that anxiety paralyzes those who keep staring at the clouds, but trust moves those who plant even without guarantees. Man who fears God, sow in the morning and in the afternoon, and hand the results over to the Lord, because the fruit comes from work, but it also comes from the invisible care that only He can give. Wise man, after we have read and reflected on how to plan with diligence, I want to speak about a subtle lie that has destroyed many hearts. It is the lie of personal omniscience. It whispers that you can see every angle, foresee every variable, calculate every detail. But that is an illusion. No one can see everything, and those who believe they can become blind to their own biases and passions. Pride makes it seem that reason is enough, but true wisdom begins with the fear of the Lord. Man who fears God, cognitive self-sufficiency may look like strength, but in truth, it is disguised fragility. Those who think they master everything do not perceive their own shadows, do not admit their own limits, and therefore expose themselves to error. That is why I teach you to use the triad of discernment, 3 pillars that sustain decisions that last. First, submit everything to biblical principles because they are the foundation that does not corrupt. Then, listen to sound counsel from people who love truth more than pleasing. And lastly, observe evidence and prototypes, because even trusting faith knows to test in small scale before multiplying. Wise man, notice how these 3 points balance each other. Without the word, counsel can turn into mere opinion. Without counsel, evidence can be misread. Without evidence, theory float, but when the 3 align, there is clarity. A signal that cannot be ignored is peace. Man who fears God, how many times does everything seem to fit on paper, yet the soul finds no rest? That is a warning. The Lord does not confuse those who seek Him. He gives signs. If peace is absent, slow your step, reassess, wait. It is not cowardly prudence, it is courageous wisdom. Only those who have the courage to wait preserve themselves from the fall. Therefore, do not see waiting as delay, but as protection. The wise man does not force doors. He recognizes when the absence of peace is divine care. Now I want to present to you a model that has helped many men who fear God deal with the anxiety of decisions. I call it the 3 boxes model. The first box contains your part: diligence, study, prudence, goals, budgets. It is the space of human responsibility. The second box contains the part of others. Factors that require negotiation, respect and time. Things that do not depend only on you. And the third box is God's part. Doors, timing, hearts. Elements that will never be controlled by your strength. When you mix the 3 boxes and try to carry them alone, anxiety is born. But when you separate them, peace is born. Wise man, do your part with zeal, recognize the space of others with patience, and entrust God's part with confidence. It is in this balance that decisions become sustainable. See how this applies. A move to another city does not depend only on your desire, but on external factors and on God's timing. A business partnership involves your preparation, but also the other person's heart and the Lord's direction. Deadlines, debts, risks all require diligence, but also respect for limits. Man who fears God, remember, when you honor your box without invading your neighbors and without trying to steal God's, life aligns. Not because everything turns out as you planned, but because each part is lived in the right rhythm. And in that rhythm you rest. There is no victory in trying to be all-knowing. Victory lies in acknowledging that only the Lord knows all things. It is up to you to walk in wisdom, to do the part that is yours, and to trust the God who makes paths straight. I will now open in Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verses 5 and 6. Whoever keeps a command will know no evil thing, and a wise heart knows the proper time and the just way. For there is a time and a way for every purpose, though the misery of man lies heavy on him. What I wanted to teach here, wise man, is that it is not enough to know what must be done. One must also discern the when and the how. A man who fears God does not rush, because he knows that even a good decision made at the wrong time can become a burden. Wisdom discerns the cadence, not only the content. Anxiety, on the other hand, demands shortcuts and ignores time. Therefore the anxious heart lives oppressed, but the heart that fears the Lord walks light, because it moves in the right rhythm. Now let us move on to Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 11. I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to the prudent, nor favor to the intelligent, but time and chance happen to them all. I wrote this to remind you that life is not reduced to human calculations. Man who fears God, you may have preparation, strength, intelligence, and even experience. Yet the unexpected still exists. There is chance that escapes your hand, and here trust in the Lord becomes essential. The wise man does not despise preparation, but recognizes that it does not guarantee everything. The fear of God preserves from illusions because it shows that even the best plans can be redirected. Now I want to read to you the Song of Songs, chapter 8, verses 6 and 7. Set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm, for love is as strong as death, jealousy as unyielding as the grave. Its flashes are flashes of fire, a most vehement flame. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can rivers drown it. If a man offered for love all the wealth of his house, he would be utterly despised. What I wanted to show here is that there are realities that cannot be bought or forced. Wise man, notice, true relationships are not sustained by manipulation, but by trust. The love that remains is not traded like currency. It withstands waters, withstands pressures, withstands time. Man who fears God, you do not need to force affection. You need only to cultivate presence and constancy. It is in this trust that bonds become heritage. And I will also bring the words of my father David in Psalm 127 verses 1 and 2. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It is vain for you to rise early, to go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives to his beloved sleep. What my father taught here is the foundation of all planning. If God is not at the center, every effort becomes vanity. Man who fears God, notice, you may rise early, you may stay up late, you may wear yourself out to multiply resources, but if the Lord does not bless, the bread will be of sorrow. The wise man understands that even sleep is provision. To rest is as spiritual as to work. To trust is as important as to plan. And I still want to remind you of the words of Exodus chapter 16, verses 2 through 5. The whole community of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron in the desert. They said, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt, where we sat by pots of meat and ate bread to the full. But you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you. The people shall go out and gather each day's portion, that I may test them whether they will walk in my law or not. And on the 6th day they shall prepare what they bring in, and it will be twice as much as they gather daily." What I wanted to emphasize here, wise man, is that God's provision has a rhythm. He did not give manna stored for a month, but daily portions. Because he wanted to teach the people to trust day by day. Man who fears God, notice, anxiety asks for stock, asks for control in advance, asks for guarantees before their time. But the Lord teaches us to live one day at a time, not out of negligence, but to learn that he is faithful today and tomorrow. Those who try to control the rhythm lose peace. Those who trust the divine rhythm experience rest even in the wilderness. Man who fears God, after seeing how the Word teaches us about times, modes, and trust in the divine rhythm, I now want to reveal some signs that planning may have slipped out of place, because the problem is not always lack of plans. Many times it is their excess, built without the fear of the Lord. So I want you to pay attention to these alerts that life gives. They are not to accuse, but to guide. The first sign is when the plan requires breaking principles to succeed. Wise man, if the strategy you designed will only work if there is lying, injustice, or corruption, know that you are already off the path. The righteous lives by integrity, not shortcuts. It is no use calculating numbers if the route is crooked, because the fruit will be bitter. It is better to lose an opportunity than sell your conscience. Those who fear God understand that the door that demands sin is not blessing, it is a snare. Another sign is when your planning depends on constant approval to validate your identity. Man who fears God, how many times have you felt the need for everyone around you to confirm that what you are doing is right? This is a weight that does not come from God. Wisdom frees you from this need for applause, because those who know the fear of the Lord know that his approval is worth more than any human applause. Wise man, peace is not born from others' validation, but from a clean conscience before the Most High. A third sign is when the plan chronically suffocates rest and prayer. If your project leaves no space for knees to bend and the body to rest, then the planning has lost its center. Man who fears God, understand that prayer is not delay, it is foundation. Rest is not laziness, it is trust. When you remove these two foundations, work ceases to be service to the Lord and becomes mere vanity. Wise man, learn that without prayer and rest, even the best goal becomes a burden. And how to correct things when you identify these signs. I teach that it is necessary to plan on your knees. It is not only opening the notebook, but also opening the heart before God. Man who fears God, write your goals and at the same time hand them over in prayer. Ask him to correct, to cut, to adjust, and when you notice that peace is lacking, do not move forward. When sound counsel says to wait, do not insist. When God's timing has not yet arrived, do not force. This is not regression, it is prudence. Correction also means measuring plans with three tools: peace, counsel, and time. Wise man, see, if the peace of the Spirit is absent, it is a sign to slow down. If the counsel of faithful men points to caution, it is a sign to reconsider. And if the time has not yet matured, it is a sign to wait. Man who fears God, these three tools protect you from advancing along crooked paths, because God not only gives vision, He also gives cadence, and those who walk in the Lord's cadence never get lost. Finally, remember, planning is a virtue, but planning without fear is vanity. Wise man, do not let your dedication become a prison. The Lord called you to walk in freedom. Therefore, plan with pencil, kneel in prayer, and walk with peace. Because when the Lord is at the center, even adjustments become blessing. Even delays turn into protection, and even pauses are part of His faithfulness. Man who fears God, understand, better than controlling every detail is resting knowing that He holds every step. Relationships without micromanaging, presence, boundaries, and legacy. Let us open the Word in Proverbs chapter 27 from verses 23 through 27. Be sure to know the condition of your flocks. Give careful attention to your herds. For riches do not last forever, nor does a crown endure to all generations. When the hay is removed and new growth appears, and the grasses of the hills are gathered in, the lambs will provide your clothing, the goats the price of a field, and there will be plenty of goat's milk for your food, the food of your household, and nourishment for your servant girls. What I wanted to show here, wise man, is that diligent care is different from anxious control. You must not micromanage every detail, but remain attentively present. A man who fears God learns that love's watchfulness is presence, not obsession. To care is to know, not to suffocate. I wrote that even the goat's milk brings provision, but only if the shepherd knows the state of the flock. In the same way, family and team prosper when there is sincere attention, not when there is excessive pressure. Now, I want to read in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, from verses 9 through 12. Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls, one will lift up his companion. But woe to the one who is alone when he falls and has no one to lift him up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Here I taught that relationships are the base that sustains life. Man who fears God, it is not isolated strength that preserves, it is unity. A cord of 3 strands with God at the center is unbreakable. And see, wise man, it is not only about partnership, it is about legacy. Whoever walks alone may accumulate results, but does not leave inheritance. Whoever walks together strengthens the journey and passes wisdom to the next generations. And I also want to open the Song of Songs, chapter 1, from verses 5 through 8. I am dark, but lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. Do not stare at me because I am dark, because the sun has gazed on me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me keeper of the vineyards. But my own vineyard, which belongs to me, I have not kept. Tell me, you whom my soul loves, where you pasture your flock, where you make it lie down at noon. For why should I be like one who veils herself beside the flocks of your companions? If you do not know, O most beautiful among women, follow in the tracks of the flock and pasture your young goats beside the shepherd's tents. I meant to teach here that identity and belonging do not depend on constant approval. Wise man, notice, the beloved acknowledged her fragility but also affirmed her beauty. A man who fears God understands that healthy bonds are not born from demands and micromanagement, but from acceptance and clarity. Then shepherding, each one tends to their part without trying to dominate the other's space. Mature relationships grow where there are fair boundaries and honest presence, not where there is anxiety to control the other at every moment. Man who fears God, many lose the heart of their own house not because they lack love, but because they try to get everything right by force. They confuse care with micromanagement and suffocate those they most wish to protect. I have seen kings lose their children to rebellion, not for lack of instruction, but for excess pressure. When every gesture is monitored, every word corrected, every choice judged, the home stops being a refuge and becomes a prison. Wise man, remember, Wisdom is not constant weight. It is serene guidance. Continuous pressure closes doors that only trust would open. And when the heart of a child or a spouse closes, winning it back requires time and tears. That is why I teach that in bonds, listening is worth more than orders. To listen is to give space for the other's soul to be heard. It is to recognize that life is not transformed by charge, but by example. Man who fears God, reflect. When you pause to listen, you communicate respect. And respect is the base of trust. When you act with coherence and constancy, your actions teach more than your speeches. Wise man, daily coherence has more power than 10 fiery speeches. An open heart is the fruit of patient presence, not of nervous vigilance. And to align steps in family, in a team, or in society, I leave a conversation script that builds and preserves. Before each important decision, ask 3 questions together. First, which biblical principle is at stake here? Second, which sound counsel are we hearing about this? Third, is there peace to move forward now, or is it time to wait? Wise man, when these questions guide the conversation, the result is light. Because the Bible guides, counsel balances, and peace confirms, man who fears God, this simple script preserves homes from needless conflicts and teams from painful ruptures. Also practice brief prayer rituals before key decisions. It may be in the family, among partners, or in a team meeting. Man who fears God, when you invite the Lord before the choice, the environment is transformed. Even a brief prayer offered sincerely makes room for Him to make the path straight. Wise man, do not be deceived. Decisions made in the heat of anxiety produce long burdens. But when prayer precedes action, the result is lighter, because it was born under the direction of the Most High. Thus you will learn that coherence and constancy surpass promises and speeches. Wise man, it is not saying what everyone wants to hear that generates trust, but acting in the same cadence repeatedly, even when no one is watching. Man who fears God, the forgotten secret that sustains bonds is simple. Presence that does not fail, boundaries that protect, and generosity that encourages. There is no need to manipulate when you can trust, and there is no need to micromanage when you can inspire. This is the legacy that remains. This is the inheritance that brings rest to those who will come after you. I will now open in Proverbs chapter 15 from verses 1 through 4. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise makes knowledge appealing, but the mouth of fools gushes folly. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, watching the evil and the good. A healing tongue is a tree of life, but a perverse tongue crushes the spirit. What I wanted to teach here, man who fears God, is that mastery of speech is one of the greatest proofs of wisdom. How many families are wounded, not because they lack bread, but because they lack gentle words? Wise man, notice the tongue can be like a sword that cuts or like a balm that heals. In every conversation, the choice lies before you. And whoever fears the Lord learns to use the voice not to crush, but to build. Let us now advance to Proverbs chapter 17, verses 27 and 28. Whoever has knowledge is sparing with words, and a man of understanding is of a calm spirit. Even a fool is thought wise if he keeps silent, and if he holds his tongue, he appears to have understanding. Here I showed that even silence can be wisdom. Wise man, not every discussion requires you to have the last word. Man who fears God, often the serenity of keeping quiet, preserves bonds more than a quick reply. Do not confuse firmness with aggressiveness. Firmness is maintaining principles even without speaking. Aggressiveness is trying to dominate by the force of tone. The righteous chooses moderation and thus leaves a legacy of peace. I also want to bring the words of my father David in Psalm 37, verses 5 through 7. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act. He will make your righteousness shine like the light, and your justice like the noonday. Rest in the Lord and wait for Him. Do not fret because of the one who prospers in his way, because of the man who carries out wicked schemes. What my father meant to teach here is that life does not prosper by haste or comparison. Wise man, when you commit your way, anxiety gives place to trust, and when you rest, the heart becomes calm. Man who fears God, notice that trust in God not only guides your choices, it also preserves your bonds, because only those who rest can listen. Only those who wait can counsel with meekness. And I will also read in Deuteronomy chapter 6, from verses 4 through 9. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These words that I command you today shall be on your heart, and you shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Here the instruction was clear: teach with constancy. Wise man, it is not a fiery speech now and then that forms character. It is patient repetition, day after day. Man who fears God, notice, family life is an ongoing school. When you speak of the word at home, on the way, at bedtime, and at rising, you not only instruct, you leave an inheritance. And this inheritance is firmer than any material good, because the heart that fears the Lord does not corrupt. This is the wealth that remains. Man who fears God, there is a secret many have forgotten when it comes to bonds. The secret that sustains relationships is not made of fiery speeches or repeated promises, but of coherence and constancy. I have learned, and I want to teach you, that daily constancy weighs more than occasional vows. The heart of the righteous does not win trust with grand words said in one day, but with small attitudes repeated every day. Wise man, notice, trust is not born from a single declaration, but from a routine of faithfulness. Promises may be beautiful, but only coherence turns them into reality. And it is not only coherence in actions that builds, but also constancy in spirit. Man who fears God, when you preserve the rhythm of prayer and rest in your life, this reflects in every bond, because whoever rests in God is able to listen with more patience, and whoever listens with patience builds firm relationships. Wise man, I tell you that it is not the rush to fix everything that sustains the house, but the serenity of those who wait on the Lord. The constancy of praying and resting preserves both your soul and the ties you seek to protect. Another essential point is generosity. Man who fears God, never underestimate the power of a generous attitude at home or in the workplace. Generosity is not limited to material resources, but also to time, listening, and patience. When you are generous in dialogue, you create space for the other to express themselves. When you are generous in offering help, you create safety. Wise man, notice that generosity is fertile soil for trust to grow. Bonds marked by emotional or spiritual stinginess wither, bonds nourished by generosity bloom. Therefore, I teach that trust in relationships is born from three pillars: coherence, constancy, and generosity. Man who fears God, if these three are present, there will be no need for manipulation. Those who live coherently do not need to convince with speeches. Those who live constantly do not create doubts in others. Those who live generously convey safety. Wise man, apply these three pillars at home, in the team, in the church, and you will see how bonds become stable. And to make this practical, I leave a relational plan of 4 habits that can be incorporated into daily life. The first habit is a scheduled weekly presence. Choose a moment in the week to be fully with your family, without screens, without distractions. Wise man, presence is more eloquent than words. Intentional time for listening and fellowship speaks louder than speeches. The second habit is a brief daily prayer together. Man who fears God, when you gather your family or your team to pray, even for a few minutes, you are declaring that the Lord is at the center of decisions. It is not about long or formal prayers, but about small gestures that remind everyone they walk under the direction of the Most High. Wise man, daily prayer together is an invisible thread that strengthens ties. The third habit is to establish clear boundaries. Man who fears God, relationships mature when responsibilities and expectations are well defined, when each one knows how far they can go and how far they must respect. This avoids needless conflicts and protects trust. Wise man, notice, Boundaries do not push apart, they draw closer. Because when they are clear, the bond can breathe and trust flourishes. And the fourth habit is to keep a memorial of gratitude in the family or team. Man who fears God, make a point of recording the straightened paths, the daily miracles, the answered prayers. Return to these memories and share them with your own wise man. Each record is like a stone of testimony, reminding that the Lord has been faithful. And when the future seems uncertain, this memorial will strengthen everyone's trust. Because those who remember what God has already done find courage to trust what He will still do. Wise man, perhaps now you are immersed in thoughts about what I have said so far, and I want to invite you to one more brief pause of communion. Close your eyes for a few moments and present before God the people you have been trying to control. Perhaps a child, perhaps your wife, perhaps someone on your team or even a friend. Man who fears God instead of pressure, ask the Lord for wisdom to offer presence. Instead of manipulation, ask for trust to wait for His timing. While you listen to my words, direct your spirit to God and let Him bring peace upon your heart. If you prefer, take a brief pause in this video for your moment of communion. And when you return, if you have not yet done so, leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Much has already been shared here and will continue daily. Let us proceed. Walk in the paths of trust. Wise man, after all the readings and reflections, I want you to keep with me the synthesis of this principle. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean only on your own understanding. Acknowledge Him in all your ways, and He will make your paths straight. This was the instruction I wrote, and it continues to be the key for the life of every God-fearing man. In practice, this means planning on your knees, working with diligence, and adjusting with peace. Wise man realize that prosperity is not the fruit of anxiety, but of integrity. God does not promise that every plan of yours will succeed, but He promises that every faithful step will be guarded. When a door closes, it is not defeat, it is care. When time seems to delay, it is not abandonment, it is maturity. When a path shifts, it is not disorder, it is direction. In purpose, it means embracing the seasons as they are. God-fearing man, learn to rejoice in the time of abundance and to consider in the time of scarcity. In both, God is present. The righteous does not measure his life by the calendar of circumstances, but by the faithfulness of the Lord who guides each season. Wise man, accept that closed doors may be straightened paths, that delays may be protection, and that setbacks may be care. In relationships, it means exchanging micromanagement for presence. God-fearing man, your bonds do not need constant pressure, but clear boundaries, prayer, and gratitude. Weekly presence, daily prayer, limits that protect, and a memory of gratitude are seeds that produce inheritance. The legacy is not in controlling every detail of the house, but in leaving marks of love, reverence, and trust. Wise man, the inheritance that remains is the heart that fears the Lord. Therefore, today I make you a call. Walk as one who trusts. Take the next lawful and wise step. Surrender the results to the Lord, and keep your heart in peace, because God is faithful at every moment. He makes the path straight, sustains the steps, and guards those who acknowledge Him in every decision. And now, I want to invite you to participate in this spiritual seal. Write in the comments which area of your life you are deciding to trade control for trust, and also pray for another comment you find. Thus we form a community of wise men and God-fearing men who not only learn, but intercede. And as we pray for one another, the Lord makes us straight together in His power.